And we're back, and it's COMP1073, and it's week 8, part 2 of our broadcast. We just kind of set up our website that we're going to be using, which is right now we've got a little project going on here with an app.js file that's pretty empty, right? Let's talk about a little bit of, we talked about this before, JavaScript objects.
I require more rest. I can't go to music.
JavaScript objects. So if I create a JavaScript object, it's different than a regular JavaScript variable, right? A JavaScript variable looks like this. Variable, my variable, right, is equal to, let's say hello, right? And what type would this variable be? Well, it'd be a string, right? Because from an inference perspective, we see that it's hello is a string literal. And here we have my variable, that's the name of my variable, and therefore when we do var my variable is equal to hello, the var, again, just to remind you guys, is the declaration. We declare or create a container for my variable. A typical variable declaration looks like this, right? Okay, this is cool. And if I declare an array, right, there's a couple ways I can declare an array. I can do it like this, var my array, right? I can make it so that it's an empty array. That's kind of the right syntax if I want to use this. This is one way of doing it. And then what I can do is kind of use, my array dot push. I can use the push to push in a piece of data. Like, for example, my first greeting. And maybe I can do another one, my array dot push, my second greeting. This is just review. And so on. And now I have 2 elements of my array, right? If I was going to populate these things up on the web page, if I do a console.log, this is a way of us communicating out to the web, right? We're going to do a console log of my variable, right? Again, this is just review. So here's my variable. Oh, if I can spell. And I'm going to use the space and a plus, and I'm going to convert. I'm going to make, when I use the plus, I concatenate the data that's coming from this variable and the string literal that's here that I've written here, and I'm going to push this out to the console through the log command. I can do the same thing for my array. I can kind of go one of these. I can console.log, and I can push out my array. Now this is a little different. My array has 2 elements. It has an element 0, which is my first greeting, and element 1, which is my second greeting. Remember that array, when we use arrays as a review, we use 0-based indexing. We count starting at 0. We don't count at 1, right? Okay, cool. So if I was to run this little app, right? So if I was to go into onto the website now, here we are, and I want to see if this thing is working. Right, so here I am. Now this is the Azure app. How do I see the updated app here in Azure? What do I do next? Right, now this is review, guys, because you guys have been away for a week. Right, once you're away for a week, you forget stuff. I want my Azure to reflect my changes. I got to push it, right? I got to push it to GitHub, right? Because I got this one change. I changed my app.js, and here's my app.js, and I got to push it. So I'm going to say updated app.js. Let's say something like that. I'm going to use this checkbox, and this is kind of a contrived example. I'm going to use the ellipses here in Visual Studio Code and click push. Or you can do it through the command line by git add dot, git commit -m, updated app.js, and then do git push origin master. That would be the commands you use in the terminal. All right, so I've pushed this out, and let's see how fast Azure is able to respond. We're going to kind of refresh Azure. But I don't see my changes here because I need to look at my developer tools. So I'm going to go inspect. And here in the console, I get a couple of errors. And some people came to me and said, Tom, I get these errors when I publish things on Azure. How come I get these errors? Well, Azure sees some of this stuff, these CDNs, as a problem. There's a way of fixing this, but we're not going to do it today. But for now, if you just refresh, as an example, the errors are still there, but the data is the same. Notice how I get, when I pump up my variable, it says my variable hello, and the second one is I got my first greeting, comma, my second greeting, because that's the array that I'm outputting here on this next line, app, where it says app.js13, right? Going back to the app, on line 13, this is where I'm outputting my array. But my array is an object. My array is an object that has two properties. One of them is the first one, my first greeting, and the second one is the second greeting. And they're comma separated. If I go back and look at this, my first greeting, comma, my second greeting, each one is an element inside the array. I can always specify which one I want with the square brackets. So if I want to look at this, this element here, my second greeting, right? As an example, I can go my array 1, and even though it's the second one, remember we use zero-based counting, so we count 0 for my first greeting and 1 for my second greeting. And if I want to just see 1, then I go my array with square brackets 1, indicating the element that I want to see. Okay, so if I press save on that one, I've updated this one, and I want to upload to Azure. I could do another update, so I say updated app.js again, right? Another commit. I could do that. It's kind of silly to do all these things remotely, and I want to do a lot more testing locally, which we're going to do in a second. But I'm doing this right now. I'm kind of pushing it out to Azure, right? So let's take a look at what it looks like on Azure. Refresh, and now when I do it, I say my variable hello, and now next time I get my second greeting, because if I go back to what I'm looking at here, my second greeting is the string value that is housed or contained within the second element of the array, right? The element 1, which is the second element, right? It's just the value. Before, when we had the previous version of my code, right, we were seeing the array itself with all the values, right, in a comma-separated list. Here, because I've specified with square brackets the element that I'm looking for, it's only shooting back the value of that element, which is my second greeting. Is that clear for everybody? So an array is a group of containers, smaller containers we call elements, that are grouped up into a larger container structure, and we can access these elements through the syntax we're using, the name of the array, square brackets, and the element number. Okay, cool. And I use the push method to add things to the end of the array. So first I pushed the first one, I added this one in there, and I added the second one. There's another way to write arrays, right, as a review. I could do something like this. I could use the new keyword. So I could say new array, and I could specify the type if I wanted to. But I'm not going to. I'm just going to say new array, right? I could do this. Var my array is equal to new array. And then I could do the same thing. I could say, well, I could specify the actual number. So I could say something like my array 0, right? There's two different changes here. My array 0 is equal to a literal, like this, my first greeting. I'll make it a little different so you can see it. So all caps. And then my array 1, right, is equal to my second greeting, right? So array can hold these two things here, and if I save it, I've saved this thing up here. I changed my array, changed array structure in app.js. Go, and then click on the check mark, click push to push it up to GitHub, and if you give it a second or so, it's going to update to Azure, right? Just review. Refresh, and my variable hello, my second greeting, hey, what happened? How come it's not updated yet? There it is. My second greeting is finally updated. See how it's caps, my second greeting. So it's very similar to what we had before. The only thing I changed was that I capitalized this one and this one. I didn't do that before. Okay, so that's kind of the same way as we did before. The only difference between this methodology and this methodology is the syntax. It's identical. If you use that this way, a new array, or if you use two square brackets, it's the same. For JavaScript, it's the same. Right? It means an empty array, right? I prefer this method, new array, because I'm a traditional programmer, right? I come from a C#, C++, that kind of language. But the most common way of doing it that you're going to see is this. You're going to see this when we populate an array. If you're going to make an empty array. One more thing about arrays. You can always do this when we declare the array itself. For example, in these square brackets, right? Let's just kill some of this stuff. I'm just going to refactor this stuff again, just for a second for you guys. In these square brackets, I could put something like, cut this out, put this in my square brackets, right? I could put something like this, right? So here's my square brackets, and I could do something like this. So what am I doing here? Is this any different? Am I going to get a different response with this declaration than I did before? Anybody? Come on, guys, take a look, because you're going to see different ways, and it's going to trick you. You're going to go, I don't know, I don't understand what's happening here. What am I doing here with this thing here? This, yes? I'm not only declaring on line 9, but I'm also initializing. And I'm doing this in one step. So I'm saying it's an array, and here are the two elements. There's the values of the two elements. This is the 0th element. This is the first element of the array. So I can do it this way as well. And if I was to save this and say changed or initialized array, initialized and declared array in one step, and declared array in one step. That's my commit. And if I go to that, push, right, then it's going to push it up. And now my second greeting, right, as an example, should look the same, right? If I go up to Azure, I'll wait a second for it to update. By the way, if you want to ever see the deployment, you can see that it's been done. It keeps track of all the deployments that I'm doing right now up on Azure for each one of them. This is a log of the deployments, right? Okay, and if I refresh, I see that there's no difference. You're going to see in a second there's no difference. Other than these ones are different places, but who cares, right? If I refresh again, you'll see them, and they'll probably come at the bottom again. There we go. So my second greeting, right? So there's my second greeting, there's my variable hello, and both of them are the exact same as they were before. All right, so questions about this little review we did with arrays. Arrays are containers. They can hold more than one value. Right now I'm holding the same kind of value. They're both strings. I can hold different values. For example, I can hold address information instead of strings. And a name. Let's say, for example, I have an array that has, you know, Tom, my name, right? And maybe I have, you know, my address, so 1 Georgian Drive, right? And maybe I also have my city, which is, you know, Barrie, right? And Ontario for my, you know, stuff here. There we go. And maybe I even have my age. So, you know, I put in like, I don't know, I'm going to put in a number. It's not real. But let's say that's my age. I can put in an actual literal for my age, 40. Notice how these 4 things are all strings, but this one's an integer, right? I can do that. And I can also say that I can also pass in a true, right? True. Which means that's just a Boolean value. So I can pass in a string value, number value, Boolean value, different values, and my array will hold all this stuff. If I want to see all the values of my array, one after the other, so I want to print out this one, and then this one, and then this one, and all this stuff, what's the proper structure for me showing all the values of my array, one after the other? What would you do if I wanted to show all the values of my array? I don't want to show them each one per line. I want to do it all at once, a structure, a looping structure that I want to use, huh? I can use a for loop. That's a pretty good one to use. And this my array 1, I would put that in my for loop. Let's show you how that works. So for loop, I'm going to declare my index, right, which is starting at 0, and where my index is less than the length. I'm going to do this the ugly way, my array.length, right? Well, let me see that's right. So my array.length, that means the length of my array, but I can't go, you know, I can't go beyond the number. So I have, how many elements? I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but my array is 6. So as long as it's less than 6, I'm going to keep going. That's what this is saying, right? And then increment my counter, which that's what my index is. It's just a counter. And anything that's inside these curly braces, it's going to repeat, right? So I'm going to grab this, put it inside here. Tom. And change the 1, which is literal, to an index, which is the variable, right? So index incoming. So this index is going to change, and this line 19 is going to repeat over and over again for the length of the array. Is this correct? Have I missed anything here? Can I do is less than my array minus length? Is that okay? Efficiency-wise, by the way, it's not good to do it here. I've talked about this before, but it's okay for now for us. Let's just save it, and we'll say show all elements of the array. So this is happening, and I'll push it up to Azure. Let's see what happens, see what it does for us, right? Again, this is a review because we can't really do objects without re-talking about arrays and variables and all that stuff again, right? Otherwise, we're going to talk about objects, and you're going to go, what the hell? What is he doing now, right? All right. Let's see what's going on here. So if I refresh, I want to see a list of all my elements in the array. There they are. So my variable, hello, Tom Siliopoulos, 1 Georgian Drive, Barrie, Ontario, 40 and true, right? So you see that all the elements of the array are populated. Forget these errors here for a second. But all the elements of my array are populated here in the console, and they're done through a looping structure. And the looping structure is going to go through the array. Array length is just it's going to calculate how many elements are in the array. In this particular case, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is going to be, so replace this number with the number 6 for an example. It's going to start counting at 0. Because we're zero-based indexing, this is good because the first one is going to be index 0, which is going to be me, my name, Tom Siliopoulos, right? And then because this condition is satisfied, because 0 is less than 6, right? This is true. That means we're going to loop again. As long as this condition is satisfied, we're going to keep looping, right? It's going to come to the point where I come to here, 6. Is 6 less than 6? No. Therefore, this condition is not satisfied after this point, after we print out the true, and therefore, we're going to go to the line 21. We're going to execute line 21. Line 21 has nothing left. It's just going to end our little loop, okay? So that's what this does. That's what our for loop is doing here, okay? Okay, this is interesting. So we've kind of built up a couple of things here. We have a variable, we have an array. How about an object? Because, you know, a variable or an array is actually an object. It has methods. It has the push method. It has the pop method. It has the slice method. What does the slice method do? Does anyone remember? Slice. There's push, pop, there's a bunch of other ones, right? Shift, unshift, and slice. Which ones do they, what do they do? Anybody? Oh, I need to do this review for sure because people are going to be upset. Okay, all right, what are they? What's slice do? No. No. So what slice does, very good questions, but no. What slice does is if I want to get rid of my age, I want to get rid of this value, I want to get rid of the whole element, I want to remove that specific element, I can specify that with slice. Here's an example of this. If I go something like this, my array dot slice, and I want to slice starting at, which element do I going to start at? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So my fourth element, so that's going to be where I start, the fourth one. And then when do I want to stop? Here's my end element, right? End number, right? And it says the end of the specified portion of the array, right? So if I go 4 and I want to say and what I'm actually going to produce here is another array, right? So 4, 4, if I do this, if I follow what it says here, right? So it says the first part is the first part of the element in this one, but actually it's not right. It's actually 4, 1. But we'll talk about this in a second. If I print this out now, if I go console.log, right, and I want to print out this this array, the resultant array, what this does is it doesn't change my array. It doesn't change it. It actually creates another array that it outputs, right? So if I want my array to change, I can't really change my array permanently here because I've specified what it is. What I can do is I can remove an element and then I can create a new array based on this slice operation. Okay, let's see if this works. I'm going to save it, and let's see what my resultant array looks like now. Okay, save it, and I'm going to say, I'm going to go up to GitHub again. Sorry, go to GitHub and say added sliced element 4 of the array. That's what we did. And then go here and push. See, like I got lots of commits now, right? Every time I make a change to my document, this is excessive, by the way. It's really excessive because I'm not really adding a new feature. I'm just testing, right? And what I want to do is probably do a lot more maybe do a complete feature before I push. Typically is what I want to try and do. Some people do this, what I'm doing. They just push every time, which is totally fine as well. Let's take a look and see what I've got on my website now. So refresh, and if everything goes well, I have, okay, here's something. I got this. So my variable hello, and then it looks like I've got something empty, right? Because it's wrong. So remember I said 4.1, right? 4.1. And then my name and everything else, everything's the same, right? Let's take a look at that again. Let's test locally instead of making some changes like this like we're doing every time to GitHub to make it a little quicker, right? So I'm going to open this thing in Finder. Let's look in Finder for a second. And I'm going to go to my lesson 8 and double click on my file to make it go, right? This is my local file. And if I inspect my files, I can see that if I go to console, I can see I got the same problem. There's no error because I'm looking at it. Here's array 0. I have only one element. And if you notice my element in my array is, there's nothing. It's just there's nothing inside it's a length of 0. There's 0 elements in my array. And why? Because I asked for a certain thing. What did I ask for? Remember what I did. It says, I'm going to slice, and it says the beginning and end element. But I gave the beginning and end element incorrectly here. I said it starts at element 4 and ends at element 1. Can I do that? No. It's got to be 4 and 4. Let's try this out. 4 and 4, and I'm gonna kind of output my result into array. If I go back to this one and refresh, okay, I still get an empty array, right? Here's my refreshing, my empty array. That's all I'm getting here. I'm not getting anything for my array. So tell me how this is slicing my array. My array slice is basically what it's saying is take a number, my array, and when my slice method does is says, okay, what I want is the start and the end number, right? And it's going to return a string, a number, or a Boolean. That's what it's going to do, right? That's what it's returning. So I'm slicing this out, okay? But my resultant array isn't changed. My original array, my array, doesn't do anything. How about if I pop something out of my array? So if instead of slicing, I want to pop. I want to do an array pop. Pop my array.pop. And if you notice, I just need to do this, and it's going to populate the last. It should return true, right? Because it's going to take the last element from my array and pop it off, right? So let's see if that works. I'm going to save it. I'll go back here and refresh, and then it says true, right? So it populated that last element. It popped it off. And notice my resultant array has been changed, right? My resultant array is now there's no true at the bottom. It's actually sliced it out, just like we were expecting with slice. Okay. And let's do a shift and unshift. If I do an unshift, so unshift, right? What does this do with my array? If I refresh my array, it takes away something else, right? So Tom, 1 Georgian Drive, Barrie, Ontario, 40, true. What did it get rid of, right? Tom, 1 Georgian Drive, Barrie, Ontario, 40, true, right? Didn't get rid of anything. But what it did was it returned a number, 6. When I did the shift, my array that unshift, right? How about if I do my array shift? By the way, notice that I'm not putting all the proper stuff in. It says it's listening for the method is it's going to return a string or a number or a Boolean. It says removes the first element of the array, right, and returns it. So the first element of the array. Okay, let's see what that is. So the first element should be the name, Tom Sliopoulos, right? So let's see if it does that. Refresh. Tom Sliopoulos. It doesn't look like there's anything different because it's actually removed it and printed, and it prints the rest of the stuff down here. Just to make it more clear, let's add a little bit of separation. So we're going to do something like this. We're going to say console.log. So it's going to print out the first element of the array. And then what we're going to do is we're also going to add in an additional character return. That's what this is doing. It's the space between these two things. I could also do it like this. I could say something like console.log just to separate it to make it look nice. I can add in something like, some pluses just to make a line so you can see that there's a difference between one and the other, right? Just to make it a little bit more, efficient. So there's Tom. That's what I've returned. Oop. \n, Tom, \n. Tom, right? Here's my my line, and then this is the resultant. This is what's left in the array. And if I go back to unshift again. So if I go unshift, right, it says insert a new element at the start of the array, but I haven't specified the element. Let's, at the start of the array, let's you know, put an element in there like the phone number, right? So let's say, I don't know, put a number like 705 555 5555. I don't know if that's a number, but probably not. Okay, good. And save that and then refresh. That will unshift or put it at the beginning of the array. There it is, 705 555 5555. It adds it in. Now you notice there's 7 elements that are in my array, not 6. Okay. Now this, again, it's runtime, right? In design time, right, when I first designed my code, notice that it didn't include the phone number and that I've added it later, right? But with unshift, I can populate it at the beginning. Okay. Any questions around arrays or anything like that? It's just data, and all I'm doing is I'm using a few of my methods. I've used shift, unshift, pop, push, and slice, which doesn't seem to work exactly like we want it to. Yes? Push pops it at the end, right? How about insert? How do you insert something in the middle? How do you insert something inside the array? Is there a way of inserting into an array? So push, pop, unshift, shift, slice, which pops it out in a specific place. So how do I insert? So let's take a look at that. So if I say, you know, JavaScript array insert, how do I do that, right? How do I insert an item into an array at a specific point? And then it'll give you a, look how it says splice, how we use splice here. Splice is so interesting. And it says array join, that's the first thing it's going to do. Array join, console log, and array splice, right, with, you know, with the second element. So it's going to go 0, 1, 2, right? And then after 2, it's going to add 0, 1, and the item that we're going to add is lean, or lane, whatever. So it's going to go 0, 1. We'd expect it to be here, where the 2 is. And instead of 2 being stale, it's going to be Lene. Let's check this out and see if it's correct. All right, or Stella. So if we're going to do that, if we're going to do the myArray.splice, and I want to include my 705 before my age, and after Ontario, it would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I want to go into the 4th slot. That's where I want it to go. So I'm going to go my 4th slot. I'm going to include 0, and it's going to be this. This is what I want it to show, right? My array splice. How many I want to go through, right, to do that. Let's try this out and see if it works exactly like they show here online. And I'm going to refresh and see what I've got. It looks like it's 0 here. I don't have a result. I don't have a change to my array. But look, here's my 705 555. It's inserted right underneath the Ontario where I wanted it. So that's how I use my splice, right? If I want to take something, if I want to change any one of these elements of the array, I just have to, you know, update or change what it says there. So an example would be if I want to change my 705 5555 after I've spliced it in, I want to change to show something else, I can do that. Let's do that too. One more thing, and then we'll stop with the arrays. So I got to move on, right? So I populate my array, you know, as an example, but I'm going to do that after I do my splice, and then before I populate it with my for loop, you know, as an example, I'm going to put another little command here that says, you know, my array 4, right? I want to update my array 4 to say to equal to 705 555 5000. Right? So I'm going to change what I put in there, right? So instead of it being 705 555 555, it's going to be 5500, right? Let's check that out and see if it works. And I'm just changing it directly like this. And refresh. Say 500. So again, I can update, I can create an element, I can delete an element, right, by splicing or pushing or popping, popping or shifting, depending on where I want to use. And depending on what I use, I can modify my array elements. Okay, so we've talked about arrays to understand their uses, right? I got the array going on, but let's do another structure. So I'm going to get rid of this for a second because we've done a bunch of stuff. I want to get rid of this structure. And let's say, for example, I have a more complicated structure. I have an object that I want to call person. We kind of done this before, but I'll do it again with you. So I'm going to declare my object. It's going to be called person. And this time, instead of putting square brackets for my array, I'm going to use something like this, curly braces. Curly braces, this makes a new object. There's two ways of doing this. I could do it like this, or the other way is, I'm going to put this in comments. You can also do something like this as an alternate. Var person is equal to new object. You can do that. They're equivalent. This form and this form is the same. I'll tell you right now that this form is more popular when I do a new object. Okay? If I want to add an object to person, right, another property to person, for example, the person's age or whatever, I can say something like this. Person.age is equal to 40, right? And if I now print out person age, if I go console.log, and I'll say, if I say something like person.age, notice that it comes up, I can find it, right? So person age is equal to 40, I should be able to see that. And if I go back onto the console here and refresh, I should see 40 that comes up, right? So what did I do, right? I didn't have an age property, right? I never had an age property that was part of person. Person was just an empty container, right? And remember, we use curly braces to denote an object. Think about it as an object as something that can contain other variables, or even other arrays, or even other objects, or even functions. It can do it all, right? An object can contain a bunch of stuff, right? So right now we have, if I want to add a property that's called age, right? All I have to do is say person.age. Once I add this, I create it. This is kind of a funky way that JavaScript does it. So this is one way I could do all the elements. Or, that's one way. The other more popular way is to do it all at once. If you can do it, just like we did with the array, we can do it here. And we can mention what they're called. We can do something like this. Age is 40. Notice how it's a literal, right? And I'm separating everything with commas, by the way, between each one. And maybe the other one is address, right? And that can be 1 Georgian Drive. I'm mentioning what they are. And maybe city would be Barrie, right? And province would be Ontario, right? There we go. So I've got an object that I've defined as a person, and I have age, name, address, city, province, and so on, right? And if I want to show the object, person.age, by the way, will still work, right? But I can also do now, because I've specified, I can do something like person dot, and it'll show me all the properties here that I want. For example, I can go person.address. Let's do that. Person.address now is going to go person, and to reference the address property, right, I'm going to skip down to address, and the dot accessor method, this dot says, look at person first, skip down, that's what the dot says, skip down to address, and give me the value. That's what this is doing. Okay, so different way of a different kind of container, right? What I really have here is a bunch of properties, fields, if you will. I have an age field, a name field, an address field, a city field, and a province field. These fields are considered keys. Think about these as key value pairs. Key, age, value, 40. Key, name, value, Tom. Key, address, value, 1 Georgian Drive, and so on, right? So key value pairs. If I want to see just one, like the address, I can do one of these like this, right? And if I press enter and go back here and refresh, I see that it's 1 Georgian Drive. That's the address. It'll come up, right? I can access this object here, right? What if I want the whole object? What do I get when I just put in, when I just put in person by itself? I can actually output the whole person object. Now you would think that you're going to get all this. Well, let's see what I get, right? So I'm going to go back out to the browser and see what I get. I get an object, and notice how I have age 40, name Tom, address 1 Georgian Drive, city Barrie, province Ontario. It's the whole object that I'm getting here. Okay? Am I clear so far? Object. So JavaScript objects, right? Think about them as having properties, right? They have properties. Each object has a property and has different things, age, and so on. Okay. So I've got my object. I want to print this up. But what if I want to show just one key at a time? I want to show my age is 40, my name is Tom, my address is blah, 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 and I want to do it somehow on the page. I want to populate this on the page now, right? Well, I need a method of looping through my, my object, right? Just like I did with my array. Can I loop through it with the way I did it before? Can I do something like this? Do you think this is proper? Let's see if this is right. So I'm going to go for var index is equal to 0, where index is less than, I'm sorry to do this to you, person dot length. Can I do that? Oh wait, there's no length. I can't do a person dot length, right? Because there is no person dot length. So I can't do this, where index is plus plus. I can't treat it like an array because it's not an array. So I can't do this. What's the value of person dot length? Well, there isn't any value, remember? Length, I don't have anything here unless I physically calculate the length, which means I have a length key. This wouldn't work, right? So what other looping structures can I use to loop through, if you thought about looping through a structure that doesn't have a length? I don't know what the length of the structure is going to be. Is there another looping structure we can use? For each, yeah, I could do that. But I'd like to use something else, something newer called a for in. Okay, this is the one we're going to use, new. For key in person, right? That's what we're going to use. So the key itself is this age, right? And I want to populate whatever the person is, right? So if I do, can I do something like this? Console.log person key. Can I do that? This is where we're going to see what we get, right? I'm treating it as an array, but I don't necessarily have a length. And this person key in person, the for in loop is what it's called, is a new structure to JavaScript, fairly new over the last several years. It's not supported across all browsers, right? Some of the older IE browsers won't support this structure, but the latest browsers all support for in. Okay, let's try this out and go here and refresh and see what I get. I got an on-caught exception. It says key is not defined, right? Key is not defined. Why? Well, there is no key, right? For key, in person. Do I have to do var key? Can I do for var key in person? Let's look at the looping structure to make sure before we make this change, right? Because you want to kind of check it out to see if this is the right way of doing things. Don't know who's calling, not in the right time. So for in loop JavaScript, right? Let's see how that works. So if I go for in, we look at the MDN, the Mozilla Development Network, right? We see that we have a variable in an object, right? There we go. And the great thing is it gives us some examples. Here's my object, and notice how we have the var keyword we missed, and then this is the key and the object, and I can print out the key and the object with the key as a reference. That's the only thing we missed. Okay, so I'm showing you where to get your documentation if you want to know how to use a for in, right? Let's see what I get now when I go here and refresh, and I get this, 40 Tom, 1 Georgian Drive, Barrie, Ontario. Whoa, okay, that's interesting. I also got this whole thing here, the whole object, because I printed it out down here, right? So let's get rid of this and refresh. There we go, 40 Tom, 1 Georgian Drive, Barrie, Ontario. 40 Tom, 1 Georgian Drive, Barrie, Ontario, right? Be careful, because sometimes what happens is the way that this object looks, where I have age, name, address, city, and province, luckily age, name, address, city, and province comes into play. But sometimes it's arbitrary what it returns, FYI. Doesn't always return things in the exact order of the object itself, okay? Because you're looping through an object and it's not an array. If you want it looped through in exact same order, put it into an array. Okay. And we're going to pause here for a second, right? Does everyone understand what I'm doing here with the object? An object is a container that holds more than one variable or property, if you will, a container of values, if you will. Each value has a key as a partner, right? So 40 is the value, the partner, the key is age, Tom, and name. And I can reference, I can see the value of my age by using the dot accessor method. So person.age, person.name, person.address. I need to use the person as the object and dot as the accessor syntax with age, name, address, city, and province as the actual field that I'm accessing, right? When I reference these fields, I get the value that are contained within the fields. Here's something, we tried this last time. Can I do this? Is that correct? Notice how I have an error here, right? I have an error because I can't make an empty age or an empty name or an empty address, an empty city or empty province. I've got to populate something in here. And if I want something to be populated, I can put something like null, right? Null means there's no value. Almost like not applicable. Somehow we didn't get the value for age, right? I can also populate the empty string, right? So I can do something like empty string. That's value. That's valid, right? But I can't do this. I can't leave it empty like this. Leaving it empty in this structure, the way we've declared and initialized this object the way it is right here, is incorrect. It's bad syntax. We're going to get a syntax error here. If I was going to save this thing and go back out and refresh, you're going to get an uncaught syntax error and expected a token. It's going to say expected token when it doesn't, unexpected token, which means you're missing the value. The right thing to say is you're missing the value for age. Tom, what's going on? You're programming and something's missing, right? I need a value in here, even if it's null, which means it's nothing, okay? The other value you can put in here is undefined. So there's null and undefined, right? Both are different, both are legal that you can put in here. If I was to do undefined and refresh, I'm going to get undefined Tom 1 Georgian Drive, Barrie, Ontario, right? Undefined is different than null in that it just tells me that it's not defined. Null is actually a value. It's the null value. It's actually a valid value, null, right? You can test for null. Undefined is just no definition. It's empty. So undefined is valid as well. Okay, so we're talking here about JavaScript objects, but we're going to be talking about JavaScript object notation, which is a little bit different, right? JavaScript objects have a variable that's associated with them, like this, right? JavaScript object notation has just this object, no variable associated with it, right? And we can store this JavaScript object notation from here, in this code block here, in a file of its own. Okay. Now we need to check this. One thing that we have with objects, is we can also have an array inside my object. So notice I have a person and I have age, name, address, city, and province. I can also have an array. Here's an array of family members, let's say, right? So here's my family names. We'll call this the family names array, right? Family names. And it's a colon. And inside, instead of me putting a quotation, I can make it an array, which is my family names, right? Notice I have to have this comma here because I don't have a comma. I need to have a comma just like I normally would. And in my family names array, I'm going to initialize the array just like we normally would. So let's say I have my first family name as, Harrison, I'm just making this up, Marissa, Dino, and Alexander. So there's a bunch of family people that are in the family kind of thing, right? We go. So family names, right, is the array, and I have elements, Harrison, Marissa, Dino, and Alexander in there. Can I still do this? Var key in person. Key is the key, and person is the value, right? Or the value that I'm getting from person is, I'm looking at key to get the value. If I look at key when I get to family names, what's the value of my array? Just saying. So let's go back here and see what I get. Refresh. Well, I get this. I get undefined, Tom, 1 Georgian Drive, Barrie, Ontario, blah, 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 right? Because remember, I've left age is undefined, right? But notice on the bottom, when I added the array, I get an array that it's returning. Maybe I don't want the array that I want. I don't want to return the array. I want to return each element of the array in a separate line. How do I do that? How do I access each element of the array inside the object? Well, it's the same way. Think about family names as the array name. So I'm looping through each person. I'm looking through the key, right? I want to test to see if my key is family names. If it is, I want to run a short for loop that's going to print out all the family names. All right, that's what I want to do. So let's do another thing. So I'm going to test to see if it's family names. So if key is exactly equal to family names, right? If the key is that's the key. So age, name, address, city, province. Hey, there it is. If that's true, then what do I want to do? I want to run a for loop with var index is equal to 0, where index is less than family names. So again, it's the, and this is where we have to be very careful. Person dot family names dot length, right? And then index plus plus. I want to show you this so you can see that you can put one structure inside of another. Just undo this one so you can see this a little bit bigger. Okay, good. So now we have a for loop which loops through each key, and then an inner for loop that leads through each value in the family names when the key is equal to family names. When I finally get down to the family names, I want to loop through. And then I want to do a console.log, right? And what I want to do is maybe add a few spaces, right? Indent, right? Or maybe add some other funky things. Like for example, when a key is equal to my family names, I want to kind of print out something different. I want to say something like console.log, family names, right? And then another console.log. So it's formatting what the console is going to say, right? Maybe a little separator. There we are. And then inside my loop, I want to go something like this. I want to say, so I'm looking at person.familynames. So person.familynames, right? And then inside the square brackets, I want to do my index. Right? Same thing we've seen with arrays, except we're looping through an array that's contained inside an object. All right, a little more complex structure. Let's see what we get when I do this. If I get an error. Refresh. There's my family names, Harrison, Marissa, Dino, and Alexander, and then I can print them out, Harrison, Marissa, Dino, and Alexander. If I want them to be spaced inward a little bit, I can do something like this. So let's add some spaces, tab in as an example, plus my family name. Let's see how that works. Refresh. Tabbed in, right? So there's my family names. And if I don't want to print this out, right, I don't want to show my last thing. So I'm looping through. If my key is equal to family names, right, don't print out this key, right? Don't print out this key, right? So let's go take this one out, and only when my key is family names, I don't want the key printed out, right? So that means else, anything else, if it's something else, then that's okay. Print out, show me the console log, show me the key, show me the value, right? So if it's not, if my key that I'm looping through, my person object, is not family names, then just show the key on the console, right? If it is family names, don't do this. Don't show the key on the console. Just show this structure, which is family names and blah, blah, blah. Okay? So I don't want to duplicate. I don't want to have this, Harrison, Marissa, Dino, and Alexander, print out here. I only want it to be printed out in this structure. Let's refresh. And as you can see, that's what happens. So undefined, Tom, blah, 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 and then my family names here in this structure. Questions so far around this stuff, what I'm doing? Because this is a key to understanding JavaScript objects. Different than JavaScript object notation, but we reference them the same way. One more thing, and then we'll stop for this video, because I don't want to kill you too much with JavaScript objects. If I go back. So we have JavaScript objects here, right, as an example. And I have my object is defined as the person object that has age, name, blah, 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 blah. And the family names is this, this array. Okay, cool. Notice how the last object doesn't have another comma. You can't have another comma because comma separates each of the fields in my object container, right? But objects can also have methods attached to them, right? Or functions. And this is where it gets funky. So please pay attention because you're going to get freaked out now. All right? I can have a function that I call say hello. Right here, say hello, my say hello function. Well, this is actually a function, right, that I declare. In my function, my say hello function, I'm going to have the ability for me to say hello. I'm going to say console.log, right? And I'll say person, right? So it's going to be person.name plus space says hello, right? Oh, Okay. So the say hello function, I'm creating a named function here. The key for this anonymous function that I've created is say hello, right? And then in order for me to activate this function, right? In order for me to activate this function, I've got to say hello. I've got to actually use it as a function. Let's see what I get first of all, just like this. Do I get an error? What do I get here? Right. So I'm going to kind of go back to here and refresh. And I got this. I got, you know, undefined, blah, blah, my family names, and then I get this funky syntax that shows me the function itself. Notice that it's not in quotations because I'm returning the function. Okay. So now I can check to see if it's a function. If key is equal to family names, cool. If the key is equal to a function, let's do another else if here. Else if my key is exactly equal to, right, the function that's called say hello, right, then I want to do something else, right? I want to do something else. Let's get rid of the extra one. There we go. Here's else if, and why does this give me a declaration statement? If key, right? If key is equal to say hello, it's what it's saying. Else, if key is equal to say hello, then do something, right? Why is this a problem? Why am I getting an error here, guys? You guys are watching my code. How come? Well, I'm missing a curly brace, right? I killed my curly brace here, so actually we should have a curly brace in here. Oops, there we go. And that's why it should look like this. It's got an extra. I'm missing a curly. This curly brace here belongs to the for loop, right? And this curly brace here belongs to the if statement. And then I got to follow it up with the else if. So this is the if statement, and put a little comment here. If statement. If statement. This is the curly brace for my for loop. This is the curly brace for my else. Right. Should just to separate it out. This one, for a new line here. This is the curly brace for my else if. Right? And this is the curly brace for my for in. Right? Every curly brace defines a new level, a new, kind of a new nested area, right? Of one inside the other, inside the other. And JavaScript does this a lot. It kind of nests one structure inside of another a lot. And this is where people get all confused and it looks like spaghetti code. It's like, oh my God, I can't keep track because it's like one object instead of another one, right? Actually, Ari was telling me this before. It's like, how many levels are you going to go deep? How many functions within a function within a function? Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lost track of
So if I look here, if the key is say hello, right? If my key is say hello, don't actually console log because the say hello object itself has its own console log. Just call the function is what I want to do. So I'm going to do one of these. So if the key is say hello, then say hello, right? Which remember, because we can say the say hello function, but I can't just do this. I have to do person.sayHello, right? Because person.sayHello is a function that belongs to the person object. Here's the person object, and here's a function that's associated with it. By the way, some people call this the person method. The reason why this is a person method, right, is because it's inside the person object. It's contained within the person object, and that's the difference between a method and a function. Function just hovers on its own. Method is associated with an object, typically. Okay, let's see what happens here. So here's the three conditions. First condition, if it's family names, if it's my family names array. I'll put this condition in here in kind of comments. If, okay, check to see if it's a family names array here. I'll check over here. Check if the key is the family names array. Family names array. If so, then do this, right? Here is check to see, check if the key is the say hello method. If it is, do this, right? This one is, for all other cases, right? Do this, do the following. Right? That's what this conditional statement works, how it works like. And this for loop says, how you read this is, for every key in the person object, comma, loop. right? A repeat. That's how you read the for in loop. For every key in the person object loop. Okay, makes sense? Let's see what I get. So my expected output is the following. If it's not going to do family names yet. If the key is say hello, it's going to say, it's just going to say hello. It's going to say my person name, the person, which is me, says hello. Tom Sviopoulos says hello, or Tom says hello, right? And then if anything else happens, for everything else, it's just going to print out the key, which is going to be age, undefined, name is Tom, address is blah, blah, and so on. So it's going to do these first. That's my expected output. Then it's going to do this, because this is the order. And then it's going to say hello. That's my expected output. Let's see if I'm right. Refresh. So, undefined, Tom, blah, blah, where are my family names, and then Tom says hello. Tom says hello is a method that's been invoked. We've called the method say hello, and the say hello method is the thing that's making us do this console log, right? And I'm calling the say hello method here in this condition, where if the key is say hello, I'm calling the say hello method. Okay? Questions around this one? This was a little bit more complex. Please ask questions because it's just going to get more complex from here. This second half of the course is the more challenging part. Okay? It's more challenging because we're going to get right into JavaScript scripting, more code. And if you don't get this piece right now, this is the stuff that's going to trip you up because I'm going to add more and more complexity to this code as we go. Not because I want to, but because we need to at this point, right? We've done kind of puddle around with some basic input and output from the first part. And this second half is going to be laden with a bunch of this more complicated code, right? And you have to think of it this way. If I want to show all this stuff, this console log, think about these console logs, what they're doing, right? Instead of a console log, instead of that, what if I had another variable called output, right? Another variable called output. And I want to output all this stuff into a structure on my page, because right now it's all going to the console, right? So if I look at my page, here's my index.html, what if I wanted to put it inside of a structure on the page somewhere? The example would be inside of a paragraph tag that's inside of my index.html. I want to get all that output that I've got on my console and populate it onto this page. So how would I do that? So I'm going to say, here's my paragraph tag, and I'm going to give it a number of, let's say, or sorry, an ID of first paragraph, like we did before. Right, there we go. First paragraph. It's empty. What I want to do is I want to take the first paragraph structure, the container, which is first paragraph, and I want to populate its child node, which is the HTML text node that's inside here, which is empty right now. It's undefined, right? And I'm going to change what's inside of here to the output that I get from my object, right? So here's the simulation, guys. All right, so I've got my var person, blah, 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 right? And every time I do the console log, I want to add to the output. So I want to declare a variable on the top here that I'm going to call output, var output. Output. And what I want to do, this is a string, so I'm going to initialize this string as nothing. It's going to be an empty string. Okay, so my output variable is declared. Okay, what I'm going to do here is go do one of these. I'm going to say instead of console log, person name, whatever, for my function, I want to do one of these. I want to say output plus equals to person name plus say hello. It says hello. I don't want to output to the console anymore, right? It's just going to add or concatenate my say hello, says hello, person name says hello to the output string. So my output string is just one string, and all I'm doing is adding to it whenever I say hello. I'm doing the same thing here. Instead of my console log being family names, I want to do the same thing. I want to say something like this, right? So I'm going to say output, right, plus equal to family names. I'm going to be very careful here how I do this, right? And you're going to see what it does. It's going to do something you totally don't expect, but it's okay. Actually, I'm going to ask what you expect, and then we'll stop. Pause for a break. Okay, so I'm adding to the output. Let's see how it does this. Okay, here's my console log. I want to do output plus output right, plus equals to this, right? So here we go. So I'm adding to the output string, right? Person says hello. Oh, this one here has got to be done too. So output plus equals to, oops, not equal, double equals to, plus equals to the person key. There we go, person key. Right, what am I doing here? Right, so I've changed the console log, so it's output, right? So output is an array, is a big string. That's what it's going to be, a big string. And right now it's empty in the beginning. And then what I'm going to do is, as I loop, I'm going to concatenate or add to the output string as I go. We're going to see what it does, right? So it's going to add value to the, or it's going to add to the length of the string until it's bigger. Okay, I haven't done anything. Even though I did all this stuff, I want to be able to create a reference now. That's another thing I need up here. I need a reference to the paragraph because I can't do anything with the HTML page until I create a binding, a reference to the paragraph. So I'm going to say var first paragraph. We did this before. And this is from assignment 1, right? Is equal to document.getElement by ID, and we're going to call this first paragraph, right? First paragraph, right? So that's a reference to my HTML element, this first paragraph element, which is here in my index.html, first paragraph. Now what I want to do at the bottom is, when I have my output, the total output string, I want to take this whole output string and use this output string as the first paragraph's inner HTML. So I'll go all the way to the bottom. When I'm done getting everything, I want to say something like this. First paragraph dot inner HTML is equal to output. What I'm saying is take the big string that I've just created, this big string of output, and throw it in there. Is this going to work? What's my output going to look like? My output is a big string. I'm just keep on adding to the string as I loop. I'm adding to the string. What's my output going to look like? Yes, Ari?
Big long line.
A big long line. Who expected it to be like the spaces and all that kind of stuff? Did anyone expect that? If you expected that, then you don't know what's happening here. It's not HTML that I'm putting out there. I'm just putting out a string. And it's going to be a long string. Until I add more stuff in here to make it HTML compatible, it's going to be one big long string. Let's show that for a second. So refresh. And now we don't have anything output, but we have this one big long string that looks like this. It looks like this because I haven't parsed it in any way. Element and put the string in there, right? I haven't parsed the string. I haven't told you to go to the next line or what it is or anything, right? How about if I want to make it so that it makes sense? So I want to make it so that it creates HTML elements. Can I do that with JavaScript? Yes, I can. How about if I did something like this? I want you to tell me if this is possible. So for my my family names, at the end of my family names, I want a new line character. Can I do that? Here's my new line character at the end of these. Let's see if I'm just going to do this for this. My new line character is an escape character that normally would add a new line to my string. Let's see if that works. So refresh, and I got nothing. So I added the new line character, but when I go over here, file save all. When I go over here, it's ignored. How come? Because new line doesn't make any sense in HTML. That's why, right? You can't put new line in there. What do I need to put in there to make it go to the next line? Yes? A break tag, right? That makes sense. I want to put a break tag in here. And I want to put a break tag in here. Let's see if just these two things work. So I'm actually making HTML. I'm injecting HTML onto the page, right? Let's click refresh this thing now and see what happens. Oops. Refresh this thing now. Now I get this, right? It's not really complete yet, right? It's not complete yet. I still got part of it that's not formatted properly, but I do have some additional elements. And if I was to go and view source, view page source, I have this. I have my paragraph tag, and inside of there is an empty paragraph. I don't see anything in there. All my data, my formatting is coming from my JavaScript, right? So let me go back to my JavaScript for a second. Here's my JavaScript. All right, cool. So I've done this is good. This is a good piece that I want, right? Well, I want that every time I output my person key, I want that also to have a new line character. So I'm going to go plus, and then kind of in quotations, another line break. All right, so every time I loop through, if it's not family names, I loop through. If it's everything else, I want to make a new break, kind of add a new break character in there. Okay, let's see what that does. Almost there, right? And now what I want to do is I want to create a new structure for my, my family names. My family names, I want another breakpoint after my Ontario, right? After Ontario, right? Somehow. And I also want this to be an unordered list. I want this to be an unordered list, right? How do I do that? Well, first of all, when I get the family names, not only am I going to have a break in the end, but I'm also going to have a break in the beginning, right? There we go. That's the first thing. So let's see how that works. I'm going to get a line break between Ontario and family names. There it is, line break. I'm doing this all with JavaScript. There's no CSS involved, right? Okay, now what I want to do with my family names is as I loop anything below here is what I want to do is I want to have my output is going to have is plus equal to, before I do my loop, I want to make it equal to a UL, right? An unordered list. Thank you. So my output is now an unordered list. And at the bottom, after I do my for loop, right, I want to close off my unordered list, right, by doing this. Oops. See how this is, my typing is not happening. All right, so then I've added my unordered list here and in here. And in here, I want to make these each of these list items. Well, that's easy. Instead of this space in here, let's get rid of that. And we'll just add in list items to the beginning, right? And then at the end, the closing tag. Right? That makes sense. Is this confusing to anybody what I'm doing? All I'm doing is injecting the HTML that I need to separate my page in the way I want it, and I'm creating an unordered list. Now, what's a standard unordered list styling? What do I get with an unordered list? Bullets, right? So my expectation is that every family member has a bullet in front of them, right? Let's see if that's true. By the way, my output for my Tom says hello, right? It has just Tom says hello. Output person key, or for each of my people is there. But this one here, this output person name says hello. You know what I want to do? I want to add in another line of separator, right? What I want to do is I want to say something like this. I want to say I want to break. Plus, I want to have this line that goes like this, something like that, and then another line break. There we go. This is just a separator to make it look nice. Now, this is kind of ugly, right? Hey, what do I put in here instead of a line break? What do I put in that's even nicer for HTML? Instead of these pluses. Yeah, horizontal rule, right? And a horizontal rule, I still need the break, but I can do one of these, right? Because it doesn't really matter how I do it. HR. I might as well do it here, right? Because that will be correct, right? So HR. By the way, you can format this differently than I'm doing it. Like, for example, these two lines can be combined, right? Because it doesn't matter how I put these together, right? But let's try this out. Let's go HR here with BR, right? And let's see how this looks when I come back to the page now. So here's what my old page looks like, and now refresh. I got a couple of horizontal rules, and I got Harrison, Marissa. Like, what happened? How come I don't have? I have everything in one, right? Did I put my LIs in the right place? Right. Well, here's my family. That's bad, right? I maybe made a mistake, right? Let's try that out. Try it again, right? That's what I'm looking for, right? So see, I can populate data in my page, right, by taking it from my object. Here's my object. I'm even using this little say hello function, right? And what I'm doing with it is I'm using my regular HTML tags here in JavaScript to populate the stuff that's going on my page. I think it's a great place to stop and look at this. I'm going to upload this to GitHub for this iteration. And then when we come back, we'll look at some simple JavaScript object notation, JSON, and how we can access that. So I'm going to upload this to GitHub. I'm going to say added JavaScript or person object, you know. And go here and click on push. That took a second. And now you should have all the changes. All right, let's take a small break.